Okay.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
R.I.P. Bill O'Reilly. Is Bill O'Reilly dead?
Is Bill O'Reilly dead? Write it and let us know.
I mean, if not, I kind of, if he's not, I'll be disappointed. So, should we leave that in or not? I don't know. We're talking about a kid's book and we're just, yeah.
Maybe we can get a crowdfunder together.
Like, oh no, I was going to get dark. I'm not saying what I was going to say there.
Welcome to
Okay.
Children's Hour with Andy Luke, who's never read Discworld,
PJ Hart.
and my lovely co-host.
It's PJ Hart. Oh, we've messed this up. I'll take a beat on that. And PJ Hart, who has read many of Discworld in his time, and this one I came to a bit later. Did not read this one in publication order, as I have the last few. I don't know if Andy can see there, or if this will even stay in the edit, but there's a giant balloon behind me that I might move out of the way in case it's distracting for our video viewers. My daughter's 5th birthday tomorrow, and that's as much personal information as we're going to give out about her. I'm just going to move this giant balloon out of the way. I forgot that. So yeah, busy times around here, but feels like a good time to be talking about kind of the first official Discworld young adult book, I guess. Do you want to tell us what it's called, Andy?
Yeah, it's called The Wee Free Men. It was published by Doubleday in 2003. It has pulled in a whole host of awards. W.H. Smith Teen Choice Award, American Library Association's Best Book for Young Adults 2004, Parenting Book of the Year 2003, Centre for Children's Books Blue Ribbon Award, and the Locus Award for Best Young Adult Book 2004.
Impressive indeed. I mean, for a book that has tobacco use as a central plot point, I think that's pretty impressive. Yeah, among other things. Yeah. Yep. I mean, to be fair, those are all the things that any sensible teen absolutely wants to be reading about. I think I was probably just a little bit too old to kind of really embrace this at the time it came out. So in like 2003, I thought I was a bit too cool for school to be reading a young adult book, I guess, regardless of the fact that it was Discworld. As regular readers / listeners will know, I was a huge Nightwatch fan. I mean, I think we can all agree that was probably arguably the most grown-up Discworld book to date, so it felt like a little bit of a handbrake turn for me at the time. I think I had just got back into Discworld in a big way in my kind of late teens. So, yeah, this felt like a bit of a curveball, and I just wasn't interested in it at the time. I think I went away and read a bunch of H.P. Lovecraft or something like broody and dark instead, and waited for the next adult Discworld book to come out instead.
All the grim, dark stuff. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. Can't beat it.
Excited.
So I was trying to think about when I actually did read it for the first time, because I suppose first impressions are in order. Why don't you tell us yours while I see if I can cast my mind back and recall?
Okay, it's not in my top 10. It's closer to my bottom 5, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I love all the Granny Aching stuff. I was really excited that this is the first Tiffany Aching book. I remember sort of getting like a page or two in and finding her and being overjoyed at that.
Did you have a notion of what those books are? I know you've been quite spoiler phobic so far, but so would you recognize that character that you know that? What was your kind of preconception of Tiffany, I guess?
All I knew of Tiffany at the time was that she was a young witch, and I bubbled myself off from anything other than that. And I suspected there was like a link to Granny Weatherwax and Nanny Og, and I was quite pleased that although we get them in this story, it's not an immediate kind of link. The Wee Free Men are back, and they are just building on everything that was in Carpe Jugulum and just boosting that to 11. They were a lot of fun. My problems stem from the latter half of the book, where we get more and more into the dream sequences, and dream sequences are kind of a writer's sort of excuse to kind of work without structure, and they have to be really sort of, I mean, it helps to use the dream narratives with characters that are already established, and it feels a little too early with Tiffany and a little too aimless with what Terry's doing here, and problems with pacing. So that kind of really sort of honestly started to bore me a bit. But I mean, you've got Tiffany is a great character. The Nac Mac Feegle's great. Mystic. One on which I only got one listening to the Pratt Chat podcast today. Really good. So, I when I say downrated, I don't mean it in a bad way.
I mean, even the best Terry Pratchett book is better than 99.78% of other books that you're going to read on any given Wednesday,
Yeah.
I think all those criticisms are pretty fair. I think Terry has done some really good work with dream sequences before, but they haven't been as central or as prolonged in terms of story as this one. So I think that's probably a fair criticism that we'll talk about in a bit more detail when we get there. So I was thinking there that, I mean, I was listening. I was hanging on your every word, of course. But I was also thinking too, when the first time I would have read this book would have been. So I'm pretty sure I've never had a physical copy of it. So I probably got my hands on a digital copy around the time I got my first tablet and was traveling and stuff like that. Possibly even read it on a netbook, on like a little actual teeny tiny 10-inch laptop, possibly while I was traveling around Southeast Asia or Australia. Probably in Australia, actually. I read a lot of books. Everything was too expensive and couldn't afford to do anything else. Read a lot of pirated ebooks. Sorry, Terry. I have paid for it since. I've paid for a copy of it since.
Shoplifting Pratchett. Terrible.
Yeah, I know. I think he would approve. So that meant I was probably coming to it when I was, I mean, not that much after it came out. I'm talking when I was like 23, 24, so 2010, 2011. And I think at that stage, I was a bit more ready for it. Discworld hadn't finished at that point, but I think we all knew that it was coming to an end. Terry's diagnosis had been made public. And I was kind of aware that there was a bit of a backlog of Discworld that I hadn't read. And this series had gathered a bit of steam by that point, so there would have been a few Tiffany books out by that point, and I don't know, perhaps it's spoilerific to say that the reception of them improved probably as the series goes along. So it got me a bit curious, so I went back and obviously started with the first one. The Wee Free Men, that Nac Mac Feegle, I remembered from Carpe Juggling, but it had been a very long time since I'd read Carpe Juggling at that point. I read Carpe Juggling not too long after it came out, so that was kind of fun. That was like a big kind of look back to one of my early favorites from my kind of first run at Discworld when I was like a younger teen, so that was kind of fun. I do sort of have mixed feelings about them a little bit. I don't know, something about English people writing exaggerated versions of Celts doesn't always sit with me 100%, kind of ghosts of like stage Irish portrayals and stuff like that. But it's so obviously coming from a place of love, and they always win. There's very few jokes at their expense. Like they always get the upper hand on others. They have a certain disposition and a certain way of looking at the world that I quite identify with as well, I think. So even though I would potentially be trepidatious about somebody who's not from that particular background writing such an exaggerated version of a culture, I think if anybody can do it and do it well, it's Terry Pratchett, and he does.
Yeah, it's really interesting because let's make no bones about it. This is a racist stereotype, uh, celebratorily done, and I guess we're not Scots, we're Irish, so we kind of fall into that. Uh, so many stories of Irish people who just like drinking and fighting.
Yeah, and culturally speaking, there's a huge cultural overlap, obviously, especially between the north of Ireland where we are, and the Scottish Lowlands, and Irish people from the old Kingdom of Ulster went over and invaded Scotland and took over some stuff there. Then those people came back and re-invaded Ireland, and so like so the cross pollination there is huge. So I think we particularly in this part of Ireland, obviously, we can really identify with this stereotype a bit more strongly, maybe. We have our own dialect of Scots in Northern Ireland called Ulster Scots, which is not a kick in the arse away from how you would read the Nac Mac Feegle. So that's quite fun, and it's got some fun words in it that I highly recommend. You look up this Ulster Scots word for vacuum cleaner, and you can send us a message when you find out what that is.
Just more of a side note than anything else, I read The Wee Free Men while on a week's holiday in Scotland.
Oh yeah, full
Or I
immersive.
read
That's
part of it.
These
Not
are the
much.
links that Andy goes to for you listeners. A full immersive reading experience.
And if you'd like to check out over an hour video with commentary, check out my Scottish Ackies tours on YouTube at AndrewLuke. I didn't really have anything to report, but I was in a cafe in one of the main streets, and I was editing our Night Watch episode, and I've done some wonderful editing on that.
What one of the main streets in Scotland. Tell the people what city you were in.
I was in Glasgow, yeah, proper fighting country. I went out for a puff, and I got chatting to a fella passing who scaffed a fag off me, and he was asking what I was up to, and I told him I was editing the Night Watch episode, told him about a podcast, and we get into this wonderful sort of 20-25 minute chat about Pratchett and the Discworld. And like, as fans already know, this is a conversation that crosses, countries. So it was just really nice. I mean, I'm still kind of in the virgin state of having that conversation.
And did this Scottish fan have any specific opinions about the Nac Mac Feegle in particular, or was it more of a general conversation? Or
Yeah, it was more of a general conversation, but
fair,
yeah, I had a good laugh at that and really enjoyed that. We
excellent.
talked about the warmth and the compassion and stuff of Terry. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is absolutely the thing that kind of you see binds all Discworld fans across the world together is that kind of relating people who kind of really strongly relate or feel an affinity for Terry's sense of militant decency, as we've sort of heard it described and discussed it before. I think that's the thing that everybody wants to talk to other fans about. You know, whether it's the theory of boots or whether it's Granny Weatherwax, how she deals with other people, like those kind of aspirational human interactions, I think, are the kind of the things that bind us together as fans, aren't they? This feels more like end of podcast chat than the start of podcast chat. Andy, do you want to lead us into the first synopsis so we can get the ball rolling?
Sure thing. Part one, patronizing is a big word. Zoology is really quite short. Down at John River, Tiffany Aiken bashes Jenny Greenteeth's hide in with a frying pan.
Beautiful.
At the teacher's market, she tells Miss Tick the sad story of Mrs. Snapperly. The Nac Mac Feegle get to return lost eggs.
It's all gone very East Belfast all of a sudden.
The Nac Mac Feegle get to returning lost eggs and sheep and doing chores, and the hideless horseman gets sent packing.
I feel like I'm about to have my knees done in here. What's all gone very excellent. No, well
Welcome
done.
to
Yeah,
Belfast, people.
indeed. So that would be as good an example as any, I suppose, of the Ulster Scots dialect. Excellent. Well done. Yeah, a bit of a different story structure going on here, I guess. Well, it's not to get too narratology about it. It's not so much a different story structure. It's just broken up in a slightly different way, because I suppose from a publishing point of view, if you're writing children's literature or young people's literature, you must have chapters. And traditionally, up until this point, Discworld has not. So how do you feel about that? Do we care about that? Maybe that's not something
fine. We've
people
got
care about.
chapters in, well, we've had a few, but
Have we? Oh, Morris had chapters. That's right.
to mind, yeah. And actually, because I wanted to bring this up, this is a very different children's book from Morris.
Oh, yeah. So everything I just said at the start of this was a lie, because Morris existed. I just hadn't read it. So ignore everything I had to say about this being the first Discworld children's book, because it's not.
It does feel more children's and young adult, though. It's, but I mean, straight in, it does feel like Discworld as well.
More so than Morris, do you think?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Yeah. Yeah, because you've got through Mystic, you've got the witches. I'm wearing my hat today, as you can see.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
And you've got I mean, Jenny Greenteeth does feel like a very Discworld monster.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I would agree absolutely across the board with that. It's really it's the witches that kind of ground it for me, and the chalk as a location feels quite Lanker coded, as the kids might say. Yeah, Lanker comes up like it's spelled out explicitly that Lanker is it's adjacent or whatever. It is that it exists separately from the chalk, but they feel like, I guess because there's witches involved maybe, but there's also just that kind of rural Englishness that Terry loves to write about, and that's mostly been coming out, I guess, in the witches books up until now.
It feels like a Lanker stretched out a bit more extreme. Yeah, I'm thinking of the passages of Tiffany running to and fro home, and the market, so I can already just picture the long country lanes and roads, and yeah, it's got a haunted environment kind of quality to it, very wild.
For sure. I would be at a loss to kind of pinpoint which specific region of England this is based on. I'm sure there is one, because that's kind of how Terry rolls. And as much as we maybe want to criticize, like he's writing Celtic people much better than I could ever write, rural Northern English people. Like, I haven't got a clue what the cultural kind of references here and stuff, but they do feel really well grounded.
Yeah, I've got Wiltshire in my head for whatever reason.
I couldn't even point to Wiltshire on a map. I think they make cheese.
Probably, yeah.
I feel that's an educated guess. Yeah, but it's quite cool in a way, actually, to have this new Discworld location that feels, well, it is new. It's literally new. We haven't had any stories set here yet, but it does feel quite familiar. And yeah, we know the kind of, well, we think maybe we know the kind of stories we're going to get involved in once the witches kind of make their presence felt through Mystic.
And the market seemed really sort of enforce that, because we've all been to a country market, maybe not as pared down as it is here, but that sort of blending of like just wild fields and tents and signs and big open space. Yeah.
Bit different from Nuts Corner. Ever been to Nuts? Yeah.
I've never had the misfortune or fortune to have been to Nuts Corner. I think you'd better elaborate for.
It's it's a famous market in Northern Ireland out by the airport. It's sort of on the way in between Temple Patrick and Moira. And this isn't helping anybody who doesn't know about it at all.
It's somewhat of legend. So I remember on the radio of the Nuts Corner market from a very young age.
Yeah, so in my day, it's where you would have gone to buy like. Oh yeah, I mean it predates. Just to be clear, it predates my day by a significant margin. But in my day, it's where you would have gone to buy like pirated PlayStation games, things of that nature, and get really pirated dodgy
DVDs, audio tapes, 5 lighters for £1.
Yeah, and I think it had it was a regular car boot sale as well. So like literally anything that you could imagine, all the shit of the day was/is for sale there. So there you go. Maybe they'll sponsor us. Do you think I did a good enough job of running it?
Maybe we should take after the book. We're both teachers. We should go down and we should get a stall and set up Nuts Corner and like sell our services.
Yeah, that could work pretty well. I think the people of what even where is Antrim technically still Antrim? I think. Yeah, the people of Mid Antrim definitely crying out for our services in humanities, whatever you would teach. Good times. Yeah, the idea of the teachers' market is quite fun. I would be curious to know if that's based on any kind of factual accounting. Did stuff like that really happen, or is that kind of Terry taking one of his ideas to a natural conclusion, as he so often does for comedic effect? That if you can buy carrots at the market, why not an education?
Thinking of how soon on the internet we got, teacher services websites, like back in sort of medieval times. This surely must have been a thing, and teachers offering their services as marketers, as merchants, going to the royalty and the trickle down before we get to industrialization. Surely it must have been a thing. It's just strange to see it presented in the way that Terry does.
It feels heightened. I mean, I feel like he's definitely taken it to an absurd level because that's his kind of modus operandi, and it works really, really well. I say as I scroll furiously to find an answer to this question, which I haven't, that the annotated Discworld does indeed confirm that the chalk has many similarities to the English Wiltshire region. And I assume that you knew that because you're a man of the world, not because you read it on Elspeth. Isn't that right?
No.
Of course. Yeah, so Mystic. Yeah, the book. Let's talk about the book and the story and the characters and stuff. So a couple of things going on here that interest me. Well, okay. First of all, I'll talk about what interests me maybe on my first reading, which was, New Witches, which was cool. Mystic, and then obviously Tiffany, and their kind of prickly antagonistic relationship it's great because that's what we expect from the witches in Discworld, and he's not kind of softening how they interact with each other. For like, my big worry probably always was this was just going to be like a kid's version of a witch's book, and straight away Mystic, and then how Mystic kind of treats Tiffany and how they interact is very, very reminiscent of the witches we've met already so far. So we feel like, we're right where we want to be in terms of the character setup for those guys, I think. And then
it's that not softening, I think, that sells Mystic to Tiffany, that credibility.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. How she compares to the other teachers. Yeah, that's a really, really good juxtaposition. And we're straight in as well with Jenny Greenteeth. In fact, we meet Jenny Greenteeth before we meet Mystic, if I'm not mistaken, or certainly before Tiffany meets Mystic. And I know you sort of get the impression from like a lot of the other fairy tale adjacent stuff that has been in Discworld thus far that like it's that dark kind of scary element of fairy tales that interest Harry. So if that's the world that we're going to be in, there's going to be some kind of monster. And ideally, that monster gets hit over the head with a frying pan, which is quite excellent. I have
domestic abuse.
I have quite a sizable cast iron. So I actually have two quite sizable cast iron frying pans. That unfortunately I've never managed to beat a monster to death with one yet, but they're there to be handed down to my daughters in case they ever find themselves in such a similar situation.
And Tiffany's method of luring Jenny out by tying a bag of sweets down so that Wentworth is stuck in position as bait. Also a bit hard.
Quite dark.
Yeah.
Again, one of the two things that strike me as borderline not kids book. One of them I already sort of joked about in terms of all the tobacco usage depictions. But the other is how Tiffany treats Wentworth and how she feels about Wentworth. And it becomes a plot point. And there is some character growth there relating to that, but it's quite raw, quite honest at the start. Like, she literally offers him up as bait for a monster in the first few pages.
I suppose that is quite transgressive. Yeah, it's not just a one-off; it's a recurring point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a big character thread for her through this, and she has to go off and rescue him. She feels guilt about how she's treated him previously, but still finds it hard, at least until quite late in the story, to kind of get over her feelings for him and for them to have a bit more of a sibling relationship rather than just like a babysitter relationship, I guess. I've talked very little about the Nac Mac Feegle characters. So Rob Anybody, which is my favorite Discworld pun name in the entire series, I think.
Oh, I'm just getting that one too.
I feel like it's explicitly mentioned. It's a good one. And like you said, it's a very slight racist stereotype perhaps. But it's such a good pun. It's totally worth it. It's a great character name. It feels like it should be the stage name of like a punk band from the 1970s, do you know? Absolute, yeah, S tier, fantastic. So he's the kind of leader, and then they all just have like various long, unrememberable versions of Wee Jock, or bigger than Wee Jock, but not as big as Medium Jock, and again, slightly racist. Suggestion that every Scottish person is called Jock. And then there's William the Gonigal. He's like their clan poet, who may or may not be named for William Allingham. He was an Irish poet who wrote about fairies. And Elspeth tells us that this book was nearly called Fear of Little Men, which is a line from a William Allingham poem. So there might be a reference there. And then do we or do we not meet the Kelda yet? We haven't met the Kelda yet, like the matriarch of the clan. So we'll maybe come to her in a little while. Yeah, because after, so this sort of section ends, as you've got it, after the confrontation with the horseless headman. That's not right. The headless horseman, which was like scary for me. That, I don't know how you feel about that sequence. It was, again, all these kind of rural witchy books have some genuine moments of horror, and this is the first proper one in this book for me.
Yeah, it was
he didn't look
scary
phased
for a moment. Yeah,
Andy didn't look phased. He's like, nah, he didn't care. He didn't care at all. I have a traumatic childhood association with the Headless Horseman, I think, that possibly heightened this for me. And it's slightly relevant, maybe. I don't know. You will remember this. I'm sure you would have been too old at the time, probably. There was a Irish language children's series on BBC Northern Ireland when I was in late primary school, so I guess in the mid-90s. I think it was maybe one of the very, very first BBC Northern Ireland productions in Irish. And it was basically just retellings, live action retellings. So like kind of low budget, like kind of janky retellings of Irish, myths and legends, or ghost stories, essentially. So one of them was about the Banshee. One of them was about like a Grim Reaper, Irish equivalent. Or maybe that was the same one. And then one of them was about the Headless Horseman. And they all absolutely terrified me. I was quite a sensitive nipper, So yeah, the first time, I remember the first time reading this, and then I'm reading it again. This time I was reading it in the middle of the night. First time I read it, I was probably reading it on a beach in Australia, so maybe it wasn't quite as scary, but it got me a little bit this time, Not a great story out there if you weren't traumatized by early 90s Irish language programming. Yeah, I don't like it.
It didn't really do much for me. It didn't really seem to kind of go anywhere. But in the moment,
lost his head.
Introduction of the character, it was more than I thought it was going to be, and I should probably just drop this now before I give you some kind of trouble.
I was on the edge there. The sound was surprisingly still decent though. The audio listeners might not even be able to tell that he just had his head in his jumper, just trying to freak me out, just trying to play it off.
That's some kind of neck strain now.
That'll learn you.
One moment I want to rewind back on is the story of Mrs. Snapperly.
No,
the classic
that is dark.
Yeah, actually, it gets really dark, doesn't it? Does she
yes.
die as a result of the invasion? The classic story of so many classic stories represented. You can't help but think of the Salem witch trials or any witch trials through the ages, but of the pensioner who's like just wrongly accused of something. It is a really resonant one. The way Tiffany narrates it is phenomenal. You really get to see the power of Tiffany as a character through that. And already at that young age, she's wise to the shit that people do.
Yeah, and I think that's really
about it, and yeah,
really important that it's because it's quintessential Pratchett from a couple of different angles. I think firstly, it's not the stereotypical witch trial, and that like there's no villain. No villain has rolled into town and built a pyre and burned this person to death. This person died as a result of the neglect and the kind of small b bigotry of normal people.
Yeah, it's
right?
Insidious.
And I think, in today's global political climate, more than ever, that's really, really chilling. I think, somebody who's been othered for no particular reason and then has died as a result, that's quite unfortunately prescient. Yeah, and to have such a young character, to have Tiffany kind of be really cognizant of that, like she is fully aware of how that went down. Has got absolutely no notions that like what happened was justified in any way or that it was a mistake. Like she knows that the exact reason why Mrs. Snapperly died. And like you say, she's got this kind of quiet anger about it, that kind of righteous indignance that I think Terry certainly had inside him.
As a first-time reader, it kind of instills some hope in the Tiffany we're gonna get. And this is one of the things that bugs her, and she wants to make sure it doesn't happen again.
And it ends up playing quite a big plot point later on. It's tied really well into the main story of the book as well. It's not just backstory, as it were.
I just wanted to mention the Little Grey Men. It's kind of an inspiration for the McFeagles. The Little Grey Men, A Story for the Young at Heart, is a 1942 children's fantasy novel written by Dennis Watkins Pitchford under the pen name BB. It's about four gnomes in Warwickshire who go on a countryside quest from spring through the four seasons. And like Morris and the Educated Rodents, it was a Carnegie Medal winner.
Ah, there you go. I love how, like, I was going to say obscure. Obviously, it's not obscure. It's no award-winning book. But just so happened that I hadn't heard of it. But yeah, it's great. Like Terry really does reach back into some really diverse, literary history, social history to pull these stories together. And that's cool. I didn't know about that there was kind of a literary inspiration for them. I'd assumed it was mostly from kind of myths and legends. Yeah, that's really interesting.
I see it's one of like a few illustrated resources Terry draws on in this book. And I actually wouldn't mind checking out the illustrated version of We Free Men by Stephen Player at some point.
By all means, we have to add it to the list. Have to get as many items on that list as possible so that we never run out. We never run out of Discworld material. I think, it's going to take us a while.
Yeah.
Part 2. It was very unusual for Granny Igging to say more than a sentence. She used words as if they cost money. Excellent quote. The Baron Wentworth. God, have you written these all in Scots? Oh my God. Okay. Here we go. What do you hear about North Belfast? Ulster Scots sounds like. The Baron Wentworth, Gaz Missing, and the Toad, and the wee free men ready to face the Queen. Tiffany remembers the story of Granny Aiken, the Baron, and his Dugs. That would be Dugs, I feel. Hamish stays a real reconnaissance. There's a punch-up with on Grimhounds. Tiffany is granted an audience with Akelda and is Namit her successor, arranging to marry Rob anybody. Not my best work. I think he did it better. Yeah. I think it's possibly because of our differing community backgrounds that I don't, I can't slip into the Ulster Scots quite so readily.
Well done. One memorable part from this sequence is the wee free men appearing in the doll's house.
Yeah.
Like Tiffany's room, which has a nice blend of there's a little bit of spookiness in it, a little bit of horror that sort of picks into that senses of when you're a child and you're alone at night in a house.
Yeah, for sure. And then it's got great comedy punchline as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good sort of building and release of tension in that sequence. Fantastic.
Yeah, I love when a writer does that, is marry two very tonally disparate elements quite successfully.
I mean, you could describe this whole book as that. You know, there's some real spooky stuff going on right the way through it, and we sort of know once we get a feeling that maybe the elves are going to be involved. We already know to be afraid of them from lords and ladies. So yeah, so that balances. I know that you have your issues, and I do as well with maybe the imbalance in that later on. But
Yeah, this part of the book we're still into some really good stuff. We've got more Mystic, more the Toad. We got more Granny Aching, the story of the Baron and his dogs, which is another really resonant one. I mean, the Granny Aching stuff, I love it all the way through.
an interesting stylistic choice to have her already dead when the story begins, because we spend so much time talking about her, learning from her, all via Tiffany, all the things that Tiffany has learned from her, but then also it sort of shades Tiffany's character with like grief and guilt. Like she feels really guilty about giving Granny Aiken this uh doll, I guess. It's like what an ornament, I guess, of a stylized shepherdess.
This shepherdess guise is one that Granny Aiken later shows up in, despite Tiffany thinking that she didn't like the doll at all. So there's she's working through her grief, and it's also saying something about death and how people live on through the stories that we tell about them.
Yeah, and we know that that's a theme in Discworld sort of previously, and keeping it spoiler light, it's the theme that's going to recur as well.
She's a very sort of Granny Weatherwax coded character, a Granny Weatherwax power level as well. Feels like I was really taken by Granny Aiken.
Yeah, because we experience Granny through Tiffany's eyes, I suppose, all that awe that Tiffany has for her then is communicated so well to the reader. And these specific moments in her life that Tiffany remembers, they're almost like parables of Granny Aiken, like the story with the Baron and the dog that you mentioned. Again, takes us into that world of power dynamics, the social power dynamics that Terry is so interested in as well. That yes, the Baron is in charge, but kind of who agreed to that, like who lets him be in charge, as it were, like,
Right.
and what that relationship should be like,
And just in case I forget to mention it earlier, we get a reprise of that at the end of the book when Tiffany says to Wentworth, "Well, you're going to be the Baron someday, but don't forget me because I won't forget you." Your words to that effect, just letting him know that. Sorry, not Wentworth, Roland. Just letting Roland know that she's keeping her eye on him.
Things have gone very wrong if Wentworth becomes a Baron, then things have really gone astray there.
That would be sweetie.
We could spin off. But that all that stuff like that Tiffany's learning or has learned directly from Granny, combined with kind of what she learned from the whole Mrs. Snapperly situation, I think you get the sense that she's going to be a good witch for the chalk,
Yeah, these are nice little mini stories. I mean, the structure of the Baron thing is that Granny Weatherwax, sorry, Grass, slip of the
Too many grannies.
Granny Aching sends away the Baron's representative, who comes back with another offer, who's sent away again. So yeah, there's this little sort of arc that takes its time, only over the space of a few pages, to demonstrate that yes, she is in charge, and um, if if people that think they have power, like the Baron, who have money, don't observe and don't respect certain um, behavioral practices, that things might not go so well for them.
Yeah, and I mean that certainly is depressingly relevant to our modern times as well. Yeah, the fact that
I hope so.
yeah, where's Granny Aiken when you need her? The yeah, just the idea that the people in charge also have to obey the rules, or in this instance, the rules do end up getting bent, but they get bent the right way.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of it shows it's that this isn't just an ideological, or sorry, not ideological. This isn't just an idealistic position to take, that people in charge should also follow the rules. There's an awareness in this story that people in charge will not always follow the rules. But again, if they are going to bend them, we ordinary people potentially can influence them to bend the rules in the right way if they are going to bend them. Granny has her kind of means for doing that, and there are others.
Tiffany setting off on her quest with the wee free men, who have, of course, done all her chores for her. And we get the introduction of Hamish.
The flying.
Very, I'm trying to think, because this is straight out of a Sunday funny comic strip, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. It's not the first time we've had a gnome or a gnome-sized individual. Isn't there a gnome in the Watch who also flies a pigeon or something like that by this point?
Yeah.
I think maybe turns up at the start of the Night Watch. Apologies for the spoiler if not. But yeah, you can tell this is something that quite tickles Terry. Just little people flying around on big birds, and it is inherently funny. Especially when he falls out. That's the best bit for sure. Lands on his head and they have to unscrew him from the ground and everything. Like you said, straight out of a comic strip. It's great.
Pure Looney Tunes, Wacky Races, Warner Brothers, sort of, Roadrunner stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And this is all kind of happening alongside the development of the Nac Mac Feegle lore, I guess, in this section, in terms of like we meet the Kelda, we understand how the clan functions, what their society is, ostensibly how it functions, I guess. So, and there's all this business with the Kelda's daughter and stuff, which I feel is like it's quite good character building and world building for them. But I was expecting it possibly to come back and serve a bit more of a purpose. Maybe I thought it was going to be revisited certainly later in the story. It wasn't, but that's okay. It sort of it stands on its own 2 feet, I think, as a sequence. Certainly, the whole marriage proposal business and how Tiffany is able to kind of think her way out of this situation obviously says a lot about her as the character, but it's quite funny as well.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the story around Fallon would come back, and also I thought there would be more made of the original Kelda's death, the funeral. Not so much the death, but the funeral rites. Now, there is a thing that the writer has to take into effect, is how do you play that out in terms of time on the page, because Tiffany can't be part of that actual ceremony and has to go outside the mound, but then she's there on her own with nobody to talk to. Well, there's a toad, but the toad appears to sleep for most of the novel.
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned the toad.
And we've also, there's a few of the Mac Feegle will come out and chat to her one-on-one. So Terry's looking for ways to engineer what's happening to Tiffany while the Kelda's death is being mourned, and like wisely he doesn't pat it out, but the price we pay for that is that we don't get the funeral rites, which I think would have been quite interesting.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you have the book in your hand there and I don't. I actually checked out an ebook copy from my local library for this read, so I don't have any notes or anything with me, just to make sure that the estate gets a few pennies at least after my first pirated reading of the book. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the whole book is pretty much told from Tiffany's point of view, isn't it? Or there's maybe a little couple of mystic POV scenes, but I mean, it's Tiffany's book, right? So yeah, it would feel weird to stay inside the mind if she was outside for the reader, I think. The other thing is, I remember from one of my very, very first writing jobs, it was on again, Irish language, just by coincidence, TV series. And it was like a student soap opera thing, like Hollyoaks kind of thing. And as has to happen every now and again in a soap opera, somebody died, right? And then because somebody died, then there had to be a funeral. But because we weren't EastEnders or Corrie, like we weren't on 2 or 3 times a week, we had 6 or 8 episodes maybe per series. And I just remember the head writer being like, oh, this is such a nightmare. Because you have to have a funeral, but a funeral just sucks all the air out of the story because people have to stop and grieve. And that's fine if you're doing, 100 plus episodes a year, but we weren't. We were doing like 8. And it was his problem to solve. It wasn't my problem to solve anyway. And don't ask me how we did it or how he did it. But I remember him feeling like that was kind of a problem. So yeah, I mean, the fact that the Kelda dies, Tiffany being the Kelda, doesn't actually have that much of an impact on the story. So it's an interesting choice. I think if I remember, it maybe opens up for Tiffany that it kind of prompts some of her reminiscences about, when Granny Aching died and stuff like that. So it can kind of see how it motivates maybe a bit of her character story or a bit of her backstory maybe. But yeah, I find a lot of the kind of world building decisions there, like, they're fine in and of themselves, but I don't really understand what kind of greater narrative purpose they serve in terms of this story.
Yeah.
I didn't talk about the Grimhounds, but I think that
the Grimhounds very much do play on another sort of dream type, the black dogs of depression or death, so popular in folk tales.
But they've got literal knives for teeth. I think that's meant to be the dreamlike element, isn't it? Which just reminds me of the hounds in The Simpsons or Homer. It's like, what are you going to do? Release the hounds? Or release the bees, or release the hounds with bees in their mouth and they sting you when they bark. Like, I feel like it's that kind of level where it's like verging into the ridiculous, but obviously still quite threatening.
It's quite enjoyable, the idea of these monstrous big beastly dogs being just attacked by little smurfs in a punch and fisting rampage of fist hammers.
And headbutting, don't forget the headbutting. Yeah, absolutely. It's deeply, deeply satisfying to read those sequences as well. Yeah, I mean, the bigger the foe, the better, I think, in terms of reading the Nac Mac Feegle fighting stuff. You want to see them bringing down big dogs and human-sized opponents or things maybe even that are bigger again. It's great stuff.
I've got a lot of problems with the dream stuff that kind of starts from here, but honestly, the Mac Feegle steal every scene they're in with just bring chaos, don't they? Part 3. Them as can do has to do for them as can't. And someone has to speak up for them as has no voices. Granny Aiken Disney like the mistreating of paw animals. The Pixies venture into fairyland where the trees have drones. They meet the Baron's son and visit a banquet where the caviar better be deep fried, you scunners. Inside a picture, Roland spills the beans on the Quin's world. Tiffany remembers a story of a woman who stole a child. A real woman, not at all like the quin who has a doll's face.
I'm speechless. I have no words.
Gotta translate some of that for me, PJ.
Uh, hmm. Anyway, so we're in fairyland now, or at least we get there. Tiffany figures out how to use the door.
I love that the McFeagles get kicked out of Fairyland for drinking and fighting.
Yeah, which again is pretty racist, but also pretty funny against Scots people. But yeah, it is, and you can sort of. I feel you probably see that coming, but it's still extremely funny when it comes. Especially if we do cast our mind back to like what we know of fairyland and how kind of cold and sinister the elves are and how they run the place, you can sort of see the Nac Mac Feegle getting the short boot out the door.
I made live,
Ooh.
okay?
He has a pen in his hand, people. He's got a pen in his hand.
The idea of the McFeagles as stereotypes, we've got actually Terry is addressing that with an inversion of a stereotype in the Queen. So the Queen, if you think of the image of a Queen, a very sort of cordial, polite, keen, sort of gentle person.
Start with breaking news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The BBC understands that he has been arrested.
And this is this sort of the insidious underlayers that it's full sort of anti-royalist scree going on with this creature. Something worth bearing in mind going on.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. And the Nac Mac Feegle are like, that's their whole rallying cry, I guess, is that they rebelled against, they have like a no lords, no masters.
No king, no quin, no laird, no master.
We will maybe fooled again. Indeed. Yeah, so there's a kind of, there's an anti-authoritarian, kind of anti-royalist sentiment going on there, which I think probably a lot of Scottish people would probably identify with. So as I said at the start, like we are being a bit glib when we say it's racist, like Scottish, even Celtic isn't a defined race under any equality legislation that I'm aware of, certainly. But these cultural stereotypes do exist. Some of them are harmful, but they are absolutely coming from a total place of love in this story for sure. And we know, and again, I guess a little bit about what I was saying to demonstrate that earlier. They're on the right. Like, we know in that falling out, shall we say, between the Nac Mac Feegle and the Queen, we know the Nac Mac Feegle were in the right. We know they're the good guys. We know the Queen is the bad guy. So, we're very much team Nac Mac Feegle in terms of the POV of the book, and just generally in life, I think. Always good to ask yourself, what would rob anybody do in this situation? Then swiftly wake up in jail. It's probably the next thing that happens after you think that. Right, we're off because I didn't understand any of the rest of the synopsis. I don't know what else to talk about now.
I love the idea of drones. I love the idea of drones.
Drones is a good high concept. Sort of
spider type things that just create dreams around them, and yeah, I don't. I think Terry is maybe sort of peeling that idea maybe in the wrong direction or a bit too much. But it is a classic quality Terry idea, classic quality Discworld thing.
Yeah, 100%. You can see these things maybe, or you can see Susan maybe like bashing one of these things around the head with an iron bar or something like that. It feels super Discworld. It feels like something that would exist in Susan and Death's domain for sure. I agree that the execution of the drone concept, like the dreams within dreams within dreams kind of thing, is stretched a little bit thin, shall we say. does have some good moments. The Nac Mac Feegle.
There's a way we can absolutely celebrate the dreams of drones. PJ, do you know what that way is?
I can't wait to find out.
It's time for the return of tree time.
Oh, it's been a while. It has. Yes, there's many a tree to be discussed.
There's many a tree that looks like it's growing, it's being built as you're looking at it. And I tracked down the world's fastest growing tree, which is called the Polowinia.
I like the way you said you tracked it down like you're about to wheel it in, like it's going to be a guest on the show. And here he is.
So it's one of the fastest. I should find out where it's from. Actually, that's your job. The Polowinia.
No, it absolutely is not. This is tree time is your thing. Just like hand it off to me in the middle of
it. Polowinia trees can reach full maturity within 7 to 10 years and are typically harvested for timber 8 to 12 years. Highest strength weight ratio of any commercial wood, regenerates without replanting, providing ongoing revenue through multiple harvests, non-invasive, non-GMO premium varieties, suitable for intercropping, will grow on marginal land and can be used for soil restoration, nitrogen fixing leaves, naturally fertilize and replenish the soil, and flowers provide pollination benefits and attract honeybees. And that's from worldtree.echo.
I mean, I felt like quite an aggressive sales pitch for Polowinia. Like you're trying to sell me some seeds or something.
I'm running a video over this, which looks incredibly awesome.
I feel we definitely deserve some sponsorship from some sort of commercial wood concern for that very distinct, very convincing sales pitch that Andy just gave us.
It's tree time. Please write in and give us the lyrics for the tree time spot.
I certainly
will sing them.
I absolutely will not. And that's for your benefit, listeners, rather than mine. I don't have 2 notes in my head to string together. So yeah, that's definitely for your benefit.
If you only read Discworld for one thing, it's the wonderful world of trees.
I feel like this is only our 4th or 5th tree time at the most, so I don't feel like we're getting particularly good investment.
Oh, we missed out on about 4 though.
I'll take your word for it.
You told me it wasn't a thing way back in life.
Book 2 or something. Yeah. Well, you see, I cannot see the forest for the trees, Andy. Or it should be the other way around, isn't it? Okay.
30 episodes to get us to that place.
Time to get on with it, shall we? So Roland eventually. Oh no! Well, hold on. Before we even talk about Roland, maybe we shall just talk about Roland.
Yeah, he pops up at the banquet. So this demonstrates kind of my problem because Tiffany cuts his head off, and so the dream becomes quite. I mean, it's quite a bit of a cliffhanger moment. So it kind of feels like everything after that is a bit downhill.
Yeah, I feel it does
too early. I mean, it might be dream realism in terms of journaling and reporting on dreams, but in terms of fiction, the pacing doesn't really satisfy me.
Yeah, it's a bit of an early climax. Get your mind out of the gutter. Yes, I'm with you on this. The first dream sequence I actually quite like. The Nac Mac Feegle at a fancy dinner. It's good stuff for sure. Yeah, it does get quite high stakes quite quickly, which maybe feels like a bit of an imbalance narratively. Maybe it's a device that was inevitably going to have diminishing returns. Because once she figures out how to get out of a dream, and once she sort of figures out how to do it once, it's very obviously expected that she's just going to be able to figure out how to do it every other time, regardless of whether somebody else has had their head cut off or not. So, yes. Very hard to do. I mean, like the whole Inception, dream within dreams and all that kind of stuff, it requires, I mean, well, I don't know. Terry has had some pretty intricate plots in the past, but he doesn't usually get quite as stylistic, quite as like into the like stories within stories in the way that like maybe Christopher Nolan would or whatever. So yeah, I'm kind of with you on this.
We could say that this cutting off of Roland's head is a bit of a metaphor for his story arc. For this part of quite a lot of the book, he's a dick, really, isn't he? There's a
Yeah,
thing.
like you say, that like end of chapter cliffhanger thing where like the surprise, like, oh yeah, he was being a dick, and oh god, she went and cut his head off. Like, oh no, he's fine. Yeah, it was the drone. But yeah, he's in just enough of a dick up until that moment where you think, oh god, maybe he really is dead, just for that split second. So, I mean, yeah, it does work in that regard, and I wouldn't say the sequence doesn't work at all. But I would just agree with you that the pacing feels a bit off, and I mean, it just maybe feels a little overlong. Certainly, by the time she's figured out how to get out of this dream, as I say, we know that that's the inevitable conclusion of any dream that she gets stuck in.
Roland is kind of maintained through being a bit of a like he's got the knowledge of the Quin's world to share. He's an info dumper, really, but I mean, not a problematic one. Gives gives Tiffany a bit of orientation, a bit of steering. It's not long after Roland shares what he knows. Tiffany finds herself inside another dream and actually finds herself face to face with the Queen. So again, there's a pacing problem.
I don't mind that as much. The business with Roland, because I think he also serves as this kind of window into like what could happen to Wentworth. Like the idea that Wentworth could just be stuck in the Queen's world for years or decades is arguably scarier than the fact that the Queen's just going to eat him or something like that. You know, the idea that he could be lost in this horrible place almost forever, and that like the world will go passing by, the world goes on without him. Like there's the first hints here of the aging issue or potential time differential between the two worlds, and what that's going to mean for Roland and what it could potentially mean for Wentworth. So I don't mind that as much. I think, you know, obviously once we've figured that out, then yeah, the rest of the exposition is just kind of that. But at least he kind of serves that purpose to sort of heighten the stakes a little bit for Wentworth. Because Wentworth's been off screen for a long time at this point, you know.
There's a lot of parallels there. There's the greed of Roland. Tiffany's relationship with Roland isn't unlike her relationship with Wentworth.
Mm.
So he does fill the role of a sort of a variant Wentworth stand-in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in terms of like looking potentially into the future, what might happen to Wentworth if Tiffany fails? Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so like you said, so then the next dream sequence, or just after, is when Tiffany comes face to face with the Queen for the first time.
Yeah.
No, I probably should have picked up my copy of Lords and Ladies, because it's one of the few hard copies that actually are lying around here. Did we meet this Queen before?
I did ask myself that, but I was unable to reach an answer. The annotations and various wiki entries that I've seen haven't said so, but I do wonder. I mean, Lords and Ladies was very much in my head as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's 10 years, give or take, but 10 years almost exactly between the two books. So it would be brave to draw that tangible connection between them potentially, especially if they have ostensibly slightly different audiences. So I don't think we need to make too much of that necessarily anyway. But definitely very much in that mold, obviously from the same place. You know, she's the same kind of scary elf that we've been introduced to. There's no retconning, I don't think, going on here or anything like that. Like, we know that these things are not to be trifled with.
There's a great use of I'll just read from the synopsis actually to get me back into it.
Let's do it.
Tiffany remembers a story, a woman who stole a child, a real woman, not at all like the Quin, what has a doll's face. Very much like this sort of flashback really segues beautifully into the Queen, in terms of this woman who's quite maybe a bit mad, is certainly not right in the head, and has stolen a child, has been obsessed with mothering. I mean, Terry leaves a lot of gaps in this story that we are intended to read into what they actually mean. And it's quite a resonant story, and one that Granny Aiken is involved in herself. And despite these gaps, it dovetails beautifully into the Quinn and her approximation. Do you know what I was thinking actually at the time? Artificial intelligence.
Oh,
There's the Queen has this sort of, what do I call it, uncanny valley
yeah,
level of perfection, but soullessness.
yeah.
Too perfect, too just right. Not any kind of flaw that defines character, defines existence.
Yeah, and yeah, it's huge that yeah, we essentially live in the uncanny valley these days, don't we? Yeah, as you've alluded to, with just being surrounded by so much AI slop everywhere. And yeah, I do find it quite unsettling to look at something or to read a few words or something and realize that it hasn't been generated by a human. And it definitely gives me that vibe, very similar to the vibe that Tiffany describes when she meets the Queen that you've just described as well so well.
That old woman and the Queen both stealing children, and you know that's what happens with artificial intelligence. That's how it gets its fuel. It's partly a large part through theft.
I mean, entirely through theft. But yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think Tiffany bringing it back again to another story of an older woman, it really got a very strong sense of social realism in this story in particular, more so than the Mrs. Snapperly story. But I think, like, I don't know, certain areas of Belfast, Northern Ireland, like, we have a mental health crisis here for sure. And like, I can picture this person that Terry's describing here. I can picture this person crystal clearly. You know, people like this definitely exist in our communities, definitely exist, and don't get the help they need. And like you kind of mentioned, you know, it's the gaps in the story that are the most telling, the gaps where people should have stepped in and helped and didn't, that just make this story feel so real. It's like a little kind of, yeah, like I said, like a little social realist kind of parable. Just that vividness, just that authenticity, just how well observed everything, all the human behavior in all these books.
I agree. It's really close to home, isn't it?
It's nuts. And like, again, to put this in a kid's book is brave in a good way. I think you can sort of tell with, you know, Tiffany's whole thing at the start, you know, if you wish upon a star and follow your dreams and all this, doesn't matter. Somebody who gets up and works hard is going to beat you every time. Like, that feels like the message that Terry wants to give to kids in these books, that like the world's pretty fucking terrible, and or it can be. I don't think he thinks the world is. I think he knows that the world can be pretty fucking terrible, and he wants to equip children in the best possible way to deal with that, to meet it head on, you know. And in order to do that, you have to kind of face stories like this, you know, things like this do happen. Again, it's not villains that are treating people like that wrong. It's the kind of everyday, God, this is getting grim as hell.
Yeah, we saw this in Morris as well. This sort of,
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, I know we've done, and I know I've talked about this at length before, and I worry that it's a bit of a downer probably for people. But you know, there is so much hope, there's so much joy, there's so much humanity that sort of opposes these moments, and that's ultimately what being human's all about, Andy, isn't it? Can we
Bobby
just
Brown shouting.
I think kids got to learn early that the man is out there and he wants to take stuff from us, and we don't have to give it to him.
Yeah, I feel we've made that exact reference at least once already in podcasts as well. Part 4. Tiffany put down the butter paddles and turned around. The Nac Mac Feegles get into a bloody big fight and haul Wentworth through a door onto a harbour. Either word of the jolly sailor, they battle a whalefish and shifting tides. Tiffany does final battle with the quin. Aid it be what old dogs and wee men benefit from legal services. Granny Weatherwax and Nanny Og offer Tiffany away to a witch's school.
Aided by 12 old dogs.
Ah, okay, yeah, I get it. I see again, just not in my cultural background, unfortunately. But I think hopefully you've read the book. You know where we're at. You got the gist. I have to say, Andy's surpassed himself here. Like, I know I kind of make a joke out of the fact that I never put any effort into the notes or the synopses, but to be writing them in a completely different dialect it's next level stuff.
I might put them on screen now with all the sort of red lines underneath where things aren't spell checked allegedly.
Yeah.
Google?
I mean, surely Google must have a Scots dictionary somewhere where in Google Docs other word processing software is available.
I did use a Scots to English translator for the second draft of these notes, but I wrote them myself in Scots dialect. Once I started, I just couldn't stop.
Oh yeah, it's in there. We have a friend working on an Ulster Scots project at the moment, actually, and there's not as much translation involved, I think, as he thought there was going to be. He writes the script in English or whatever, then gives it to somebody else to have them quote unquote translated into Ulster Scots, and I think that's not as laborious a process as you might imagine.
So we kick off with Roland smashing a nut, which lets the Mac Feegles through to the Queen's world with the bee women and the women that are watching a man hit a nut. And this is all a picture, actually, in Terry's after note in the book. It references certain a real picture that Roland and Tiffany are in. Let me just see if I've got it handy. Oh, it might well have come up on the video, but it's called The Fairy Feller's Masterstroke by Richard Dadd, and it's in the Tate Gallery in London. It's quite small, only 21 inches by 15 inches. And Terry says it took the artist 9 years to complete in the middle of the 19th century, and he cannot think of a more famous fairy painting. It is indeed very strange. Summer heat leaks out of it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you get to the end of the book, you read that end note, then the first thing you do is Google it or look it up. And yeah, I mean, he's right. It's a strange picture. It's very intricately detailed. I can see why it took 9 years. Well, I mean, 9 years is a long time. But yeah, I mean, it would take me longer than 9 years for sure. It would take me the rest of my life, I think. So
Terry writes, Nac Mac Feegle does not appear anywhere in the painting, but I suppose it's always possible that one was removed for making an obscene gesture. It's the sort of thing they do.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's 2 books in a row then with significant paintings inspiring them. You know, we got Rembrandt's Night Watch, and now we got this. He's in his 19th century European fine art phase, I guess. It's cool. Better than having a heroin phase, I suppose. Got a bit dark again there. Yeah, so...
Did you say heroin phase?
Yeah, I did.
I'll just bring out the stereotypes now.
Oh, God, I didn't even think of that. Yeah. First train spotting reference of the night. We got quite far. Yes, so joked about it a couple of times so far, but And I always, I love speculating about what it would be like to adapt a Discworld book. So if anybody from Narrativia is listening and they want to hire me to write a script for a Discworld TV series, I'm very much available to do so.
I think for this big dream sequence piece, I mean, you would have to go big with just Mac Feegles everywhere on the canvas, just beating the shit out of the Quin's dreams, and like you've just got a full. I can see the full widespread carnage.
Yeah, so the scene that will cause problems for editorial standards and policy at any given broadcaster or streamer would be the fact that this all takes place, or a significant part of it takes place, on a tobacco wrapper. And the fact that it takes place on a tobacco wrapper won't make any sense unless one of the main characters in the story is seen repeatedly smoking tobacco from a pipe, which you're just straight up not allowed to do, I don't think, in kids' TV anymore. Yeah. So it's a tricky one.
I hear this is making some sort of translation to film, maybe Spielberg, or did I see Henson's name associated?
I mean, as with all previous sort of A-list Discworld adaptations, I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah.
Yep, when you're there. Writing a nautical piece myself, I think I appreciated that element of it, of all the dream sequences, of the Mac Feegles versus a whale and preparing to do battle. The notion that the tides going out and just like completely clearing everything down to the ocean floor, and that sort of sense of anticipating dread before the tide comes back in again. Lighthouses are always kind of, I don't know, I find it very romantic things. There's something beautiful about lighthouses.
Yeah, for sure. And just the whole nautical connection and the way that he connects the chalk, that like chalk was deposited there by the ocean, or it used to be an ocean. I'm not aware of the science. I've already forgotten the science of it, but that's apparently how real chalk forms underground or on the ground. And even though like it's essentially landlocked, it has memories of being an ocean, and there's tiny little sea creatures fossilized in it and stuff like that. And then Granny's connection to the chalk through her life and work as a shepherd, and then her connection to the sea through the Jolly Sailor tobacco and stuff. I love, how all kind of, it's just layers of the same world essentially. But I love how well connected everything is, even though we know, we said a couple of times, this book has kind of got away from us a little bit in terms of pacing and stuff like that. But it is, as we would expect, I suppose, a full 10 out of 10 in terms of world building, regardless, isn't it? Oh, he doesn't know. Oh, I was trying to give him an easy an easy praise to make there.
I'm undecided, but I think this book has certainly gone up.
9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. I mean, I don't mean overall, just in terms of the world building. Given that we're setting up a completely new
outside of the dream. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
If we're talking the chalk and Tiffany's world with Miss Tick and everything, taking half the book is dreams and taking those aside. Yeah, and it's such rich lore with Granny aching. I think it does accomplish that element of it really fast and really efficiently, really, really professionally. Yeah.
And I think, even if you were reading this on release, which obviously neither of us did, there's a sense here that a new storyline within Discworld, like we already have all these different character storylines, I think there's a sense, maybe I'm reading into this retroactively, but there is a sense to me that this isn't going to be a one and done. If we think about all that lore that was established about the Nac Mac Feegle and the Kelda and how that never really paid off, you get a sense that a longer table is being set here, and that we're probably going to return to this story world in a way that we didn't with pyramids or whatever. This isn't a one-off. this is going to be the start of a new character series. So yeah, it leaves you with hope, doesn't it? You get to the stage, there's a little bit about sort of, yeah, up and, well, mostly down pacing with the dream.
It's that lore that sets up the finale, and so you've got, I'm thinking primarily of Thunder and Lightning.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if it's sufficiently strong enough if their reappearance isn't kind of hidden under all the dream stuff.
Yeah, fair. I mean,
Certainly a reasonable choice, good choice.
yeah, and there's stuff to like, I think, in the Jolly Sailor dream, as I sort of think of it. Yeah, like you mentioned, the Nac Mac Feegle's fighting the whale is definitely up there. Again, that's Terry taking things to their logical extremes once again. Like in Nac Mac Feegle's, they're the smallest imaginable warriors. Like, what's the biggest creature that they could conceivably fight? The whale's obviously the biggest mammal. So it's just a natural, hilarious mental image conjured up there. Yeah, I would like to see that transpire on screen if the censors would allow.
Yeah, and I couldn't help thinking of, we've had seafaring escapades in Jingo, and other sorcery, maybe?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, why not? Well, we had that geographical teleportation thing, certainly. It's also doing that sort of trope that we've criticized Terry for before, of having the ending happen 3 or 4 times. That I kind of don't feel as annoyed by this time. Possibly the dream thing is masking that and taking the flag. But yeah, I like the ending we got in terms of the big central conflict with the Queen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think it is satisfying to see the real world repercussions of all this kind of play out in quite a real politic, down to earth kind of way. Quiet conversation with her dad and the Lord, and how Roland sort of comes back to society, and what Tiffany's place in that society is going to be. All feels, quite grounded in a way that is satisfying in comparison to, especially that final really high concept dream sequence. So yeah, agreed. It's a good ending, even though if it sags a little bit in the second half, in the second act, I should say. You're left. Especially. I mean, absolutely. Once Granny and Nanny turn up, you're in a franchise. You're in a witches adjacent continuing storyline that's going to get some more books by that stage for sure.
Well, that's a reasonable place where I can talk about this as one of my favorite scenes. So Granny and Nanny show up. I punched the air a little bit. I think it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been quite a few books since we've had Granny and Nanny together, and it just seems so right that non-exploitative, that they are there, and it's like a seal of approval, a stamp on all this stuff we've been talking about the world building of Tiffany. And it's also, you regulars will have heard me pine on about Esk from Equal Rights and how we have never had Esk return, although Granny was supposed to be sponsoring her in Unseen University. So Tiffany is kind of placed as this Esk-like character. And there's some great Granny Weatherwax and Nanny Og lines as well. Do you have any favorite scenes you want to talk about? Or
Nac Mac Feegle's versus Whale, I just mentioned, that's up there. I think it's a good payoff for the slightly meandering dream sequence. Yeah, the story of both the kind of horrendously grim social realist stories of Mrs. Snapperly and the other woman who took the baby. Just how well observed those are, just how grim and affecting they are, just how women, older women especially, are treated in society is so well observed and so tragic. It's really hard to shake. Like even now, just talking about them, it's quite hard to shake. So yeah, just in terms of craftsmanship, I mean, they're not funny, they're not set pieces. In what is a funny book full of set pieces, but they're just incredible examples of craft.
The Mrs. Snapperly story too. And actually, when I was looking for favourite scenes, turns out I had a lot more than I thought. And anything with Granny Aching in, anything with the wee free men in. And to come back to the Granny Weatherwax quote, I had so many quotes and I offered you one of them. And so do you want to kick off with the Granny Weatherwax quote? It's kind of
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The thing about witchcraft, said Mistress Weatherwax, is that it's not like school at all. First you get the test, and then afterwards you spend years finding out how you passed it. It's a bit like life in that respect. Yeah, I mean, I sort of feel that you put that in there probably knowing it was going to be a favourite of mine. Those are the kind of quotes that I tend to pick. As you know, I rarely go for the big punchlines or the puns. You know, I always go for the reasons that Discworld made me think. All the reasons why, you know, these books have stayed with me and stuck with me for as long as they have. And it's lines like that, stuff like that all day long.
I do have my second Granny Weatherwax quote here.
Do it.
We look to the edges, said Mistress Weatherwax. There's a lot of edges, more than people know, between life and death, this world and the next, night and day, right and wrong, and they need watching. We watch them, we guard the sum of things, and we never ask for any reward. That's important.
Yeah, Granny just comes in slinging grannyisms, just left, right, and centre right at the end.
I've got a few short ones. Nothing's louder than the end of a song that's always been there. Oh, it's buried poetry and not in a McGonagall way.
Indeed, indeed.
Being right doesn't always work. Oh, tell me about it. And I love this one. This is so me. It was very unusual for Granny Aching to say more than a sentence. She used words as if they cost money.
Yeah, I mean, it just conjures up such a layered, authentic mental image of a person, doesn't it? Especially an older person. I think we all know older people like that. And yeah, it's a tremendous line. Very, very good craft. I do have a slightly funny one, actually. I tell a lie. I'm going to throw it in. And I know you like this one too. I can see we're going to get along like a house on fire, said Mystic. There may be no survivors.
Do you know what I like about that one? Why I selected that? Because it taught me something new about the text that wasn't immediately apparent. It is a funny line, but it's also a line that demonstrates great love from Mystic, that she has realized what this child is up against and has taken the step of leaving her the toad, but essentially abandoning her from most of the story because she realizes how weighty the challenge is, that she can't use her ego and or how she views herself to deal with this challenge. She needs to go and get like top tier witches, and also to risk letting Tiffany operate without the safety net of having her around. I mean, that's just one reading. If you
it's
you
a
have
fair
your
point.
own reading.
No, I can definitely see where you're coming from there, and I think it's really nice payoff when you realize that's been at least part of it. That like Mystic has gone to get reinforcements essentially, and Tiffany's just sorted it all out in the interim. She's great. Absolutely fantastic payoff for sure.
And it is a great statement in terms of chemistry between people and hatching plans and stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think it's great. The message of this book for kids is, you know, that you have agency and you can get stuff done, and that the way that you see the world is as valid as the way that grown-ups see the world. I think all those messages are really, really important, and there's a kind of implied inherent self-efficiency or responsibility that the kids in this story have, and that Tiffany embodies, that just, not to sound all like old and boomerish about it, but it feels like that's kind of slipping away, like parents, like I'm a parent, obviously I have no other parents who have kids like significantly older than mine who just like aren't allowed to do stuff, or like won't do stuff, or like won't run errands, won't go to the shops by themselves, even if they're in their teens, stuff like that. And you just go, where's the agency? Like, where are we teaching people to be people? If they're just being coddled. I hate to use the word coddled. It's not. I think it's a lot more complicated than that, and it's a larger societal issue. It's not just parents being lazy or whatever, but like definitely, you read a story like this and you go, oh yeah, it would, I think, if you're a kid, make you want to go out and do things in a way that maybe kids today are generally a bit more hesitant to do.
Would this be a book you'd give to your kids or read to them?
100%. I will have to wait a few years for sure, but we'll have to have a serious talk about the evils of smoking, as obviously as we do as well.
In the meantime, you can always start them off with something safe like Mars.
yeah. Just traumatize them first, and then they won't care. They won't care about all the existential dread. Yeah, oh man, I can't wait, actually. Yeah, probably a year or two away at least, I'd say, from starting on these. But yeah, they're locked and loaded, that's for sure.
I had one honourable mention quote, and it's just a little childish thing. A unicorn is nothing more than a big horse that comes to a point. There.
Yeah, it's good. I think we were both very respectful of Nac Mac Feegle culture to not pick Nac Mac Feegle quotes for our favourites. I mean, certainly after the extended Scots readings we did in the synopses, I'm sure our listeners are probably glad that we didn't pick any Nac Mac Feegle quotes either.
We'll just do a few plugs in.
Go for it.
I'm noticing on the Blue Sky account, there's been a lot of nice words said from Mike Jarrett and David Curtis, both of whom are plugging us regularly. So thank you for that.
Thanks,
and also Ben and Elizabeth over at the Pratchett podcast. As I mentioned, I'd enjoyed to listen to an episode today, so highly recommend that.
Seconded.
Thank you to my patrons. So this and all my other video and text and comic stuff comes out early on patreon.com/AndrewLuke for the £1 a month tier and whatever else you pay above. So thank you to Sonia, Andree, Richard Huang, Andrew Bolster, Donal, Fallon, Alex C, Amanda Rodriguez, Shell, Dave Cromie, Matt Saunders, Alan Rowell, Benjamin Stone, Arsalan, Haider Ali, and particularly Ian Lawther, who also got halvers on the Zoom bill, which allows us to do this.
Thanks, everybody. As always, that's definitely money well spent every month. If you want to get on the bandwagon, by all means, please do. What shall I plug? It was great. I don't know if anybody came to see us at the Render Festival in February past in Belfast. We were showing Help, our VR short film, live. It was a bit hectic. We were in a VR arcade with people playing Mario Kart behind us and Beat Saber beside us. But it was great fun, and we met so many cool people. The foot traffic was tremendous, and the whole event was absolutely really nourishing creatively and professionally. So big shout out to Render Festival, and thanks for having us. The Double Zone remains somewhere on BBC Sounds, I think, as an episode of the Illuminations podcast. So check that out if you're into spooky real world history stuff. And just a final plug for Adrian Tchaikovsky, who doesn't need a plug because he's much more prolific and successful fantasy author than either of us. He has a new book out in his Tyrant Philosophers series this month. He gave us a little shout out on Blue Sky, I believe. He was looking for read along podcasts. And
yes, hello again.
Well, if you make it this far, Adrian, apologies. But thanks for sticking with us. He's one of my absolute famous. One of my absolute favorite current fantasy and sci-fi authors. His Tyrant Philosophers series in particular is a favorite, so definitely check that out. If you're into this kind of, it's like, I'm underselling it if I say it's like Discworld without the humor, but it is a really original, really well thought out fantasy world that feels contemporary and feels real in the way that Discworld does. So, but a bit more kind of darker, maybe written for the more darker socio-political times that we currently find ourselves in. Highly recommend that.
If you don't care for any of that, with a multiple award-winning author with a cult following, you could check out my Coastlines After Dark novella and find out why I hate unicorns so much.
I can see it. That's going to be the next cult following. It's really funny. It's really good. It's actually, my copy has made its way home. It's back in the office somewhere. Still get to flick through all because it's all the little vignettes make it a really fun book to just flick through if you need a little chuckle or a little something a bit out there, a crazy little idea. It's excellent.
You can find us on the web at Discord GNU on Facebook, YouTube, Blue Sky, across loads of different podcast platforms, but sure, you've got the one you like already, so stick with that probably.
That would be my recommendation as well. Okay, so we've explored a new exciting strand of the Discworld. Wherever will it take us
next? Up
next?
there, I haven't discussed that. I feel it was a better book because of it. So
yeah, it's so often the case.
Discworld.
Do absolutely. Keep reading. We will join you next time for.
I know what this one is. It's Monstrous Regiment. I'm sure it's going to be something about the watch, but let's find out.
Yeah, I definitely have a hard copy of this, of the hardback. Bought this on release. Was probably one of my least favorites at the time, but it is. And Andy's probably a bit annoyed that I'm coloring his read, but it is one of the most highly regarded that I see people talking about, certainly on the Discworld Reddit. It seems to be quite near the top of a lot of other people's lists. It was quite near the bottom the first time I read it, so I'm really excited to reevaluate Monstrous Regiment, so hopefully you can join us for that.
I am intrigued. That is your cue to read it for the second time, the first time, the third time, and join us back here in about a month. Or
see you then.
Already. Time travelers.
Timey-wimey.